everyone. Welcome to the SMAC Sitecore. So we actually called this webinar number 2, but it's actually first webinar for quarter 3 that we're doing. The other one we moved out to quarter 4. So I'm just going to share my screen and go over a few housekeeping items, and then I will introduce our 3 speakers. So let me just pull that up. All right, so first up, we do have a November 2024 session that we would like to book. We have 1 speaker, I believe, so far, but we would like a couple more. So if you have any topics, please submit them to smac@sitecore.com and we'll get back to you. Sitecore happenings, we have MVP Summit happening October 14th. Everyone should have gotten their invite for that. And then Sitecore Symposium is following that October 15th to the 18th, and that's all happening in Nashville, Tennessee at the Gaylord Opryland Resort. And you can go right here to this link on the screen to register if you haven't done so already. All right, and up for today's speakers, we have Ishraq, Vaishali, and Gaurav. And their topics are there on the screen. I won't read them to you. And with that, I will go ahead and hand off to Ishraq.
Thank you, and thanks again for giving me the chance to present at SMAC. Let me see. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Let's see. Oh, I'm not even sharing. Wow. Okay. Let's see. Waiting for the magic to happen. Come on. Good. All right. So hopefully this is going to be a light topic. It's about creating sustainable solutions. I had the chance to work on the topic of sustainability quite a lot this year, and I think by the end of this session, everyone gonna realize that we already do that. So that's good. And the second thing, we have seen this as a pattern almost already. We've seen privacy becomes enforced by law and become privacy by design. Accessibility, same thing. So creating green solutions, more sustainable and digital responsible kind of implementation, I think is going to be the next big thing. The Green Web Foundation is intending to create strategies towards achieving fossil-free internet by 2030. And as we know, like big companies nowadays are being sued for not being inclusive, right? So how about introducing the concept of green by design? So the whole idea is, let's think about it from the get-go, incorporated in every little life cycle of our implementation, so we don't end up having to put into time and resources to think about sustainability. So this is the gist of what I want to talk about today. As I mentioned, it's going to be lightweight, so I'm not going to go deep dive into any technical consideration. I think that deserves to be like a standalone session with more focus on that. But like for the sake of today, I want to just get into what is a sustainable system. So in a quick summation of what's that is the idea of implementing and creating solutions that takes the environment into account in a sense where it has a low impact. So let's take web development. What goes behind the scene when we visit a website, right? So when I visit a website, there is some computation that happens on the server side. There is computation happen on your device. All of these processes actually emit CO2. It consumes some sort of like a carbon or at least carbon footprint every time we do a visit. So creating a sustainable website means I deliver lightweight websites when it comes to images. For example, we talk about optimized images. So instead of consuming the entire bandwidth of your data plan, right, downloading images on your mobile, we're actually delivering something more optimized for the data transfer, and so on and so on. So this is just like the idea behind the sustainable system. So when we talk about sustainability, then we're actually coining the 2 concepts of efficiency and optimization. And again, these concepts are not new in the web development world, and it's something we practice every time we work with our content, with our designs, with our solutions. It's about optimization. It's about efficiency. So I want to just focus on the 3 areas for the sake of today. Number one, how we can optimize server usage so we emit less carbon out there, how we can efficiently leverage the computing resources, and finally, how we can minimize data transfer. So for the first 2 points, basically, we're talking about hardware, right? Our servers, our devices, and all of that. And the manufacturing sector has already been investing a lot in this. So nothing of this new. It's been decades in the making. Greenhouseing, I'm going to just throw a lot for green out there. Green offices, green, almost everything has always been there for some time now. So there has been lots of enhancement on that front. So if we come to where we host our websites, there's always been the concept of being on cloud or on a premise, right? We understand why someone would still need that for security, for ownership, for, like every client have their own business cases. But researchers has already been showing that if you move to cloud, although it comes with a price tag, right? You're providing more efficiency in terms of the sustainability practices. You emit less carbon dioxide, you use less computation. So there's a reduction 90% compared to on-premise. Again, in terms of scalability, developers doesn't work 24/7, right? And even development teams, even if they're spread across the website, doesn't have to have their sites and servers running all the time. Same thing with your website, with the exception of certain industries, right? You don't have that. Maybe you need the availability to be 24/7, but you don't need the computational resources to be available 24/7. So you can shut it down at certain times, so you can scale back when you're under normal traffic. This is where you analyze that and you get it from the Sitecore metrics or whatever, right? And then you can scale it out and up whenever you have traffic, when there is a demand. So these concepts, again, these are things that we do regularly. These are baked in part of our implementations and our thinking and all of that. Now we're just like labeling it with the sustainability label. It's just like bringing this more often to the picture when we talk, just to make sure that, yeah, we're not going to be surprised down the line. It's like we have to be compliant with sustainability along the road, right? So despite these enhancements and the hardware efficiency, on the other side, when we talk about web development, there has been an increase in the size of web pages, right? We've just mentioned that part of the sustainability when we think about websites is loading lightweight web pages. There has been increase since people started to do this measure, around 70% on the size of pages on desktop, and it doubled on mobile. So all of this just negates all the hardware efficiency gains that has been achieved already. So I want to tackle this within the web development context in only 2 areas. And as mentioned, technical consideration, that's a huge topic, can be covered separately, but let's talk about architecture and let's talk about content and data. And one of the most common architectural design that we have been talking about for a couple of years already is composable. So composable systems, if I just break it down to how it looks like, and then we can coin it with the sustainability concept benefits, and then see does this fit as meeting the sustainability goals and achieve that. So composable system in a nutshell, you have multiple components or modules, call it whatever you want, right? So my tech stack created from, I don't know, best of a breed, BIM, DAM, my CMS, and all of that. And it is integrated through an integration layer. This integration layer is responsible for aggregating and getting all of your data, content, user data to your website, right? And then, again, this is, although from an architecture perspective, we have been talking about this for a while now, and in the top mid layer to enterprise companies, they already have that. You never see, or rarely see, organization working with one system, right? They're always working and integrating with multiple systems. So that's kind of the process, how things done already. Even if you look into Monolith, if I have my tech stack, I have an XP, but I still do integrate maybe with Marketo. I'm doing integration with Salesforce, with a BIM. So how can I introduce the concept of sustainability into whether it's a composable or even monolith. Maybe it's more challenging on the right side, but it's still something that's doable. So let's say the benefit of, okay, what composability can help me to achieve within sustainability. So number one, resource optimization. So as we mentioned, you have separate number or different number of components or modules or systems that you are interacting with, which means if at a certain time I identify one of these systems are consuming more resources, creating more waste, I can just simply take it out without breaking my entire ecosystem, right? So composable system allow me this flexibility to swap and to take out part of my ecosystem without breaking the whole system. This is actually hand in hand with sustainability in terms of I can easily adjust my metrics and say like the acceptable amount on the system coming from this vendor with this amount of waste and data processing and so on and so forth. Enhanced flexibility with reduced waste, same concept. As many of we already know, CEOs like to buy companies, right? And a byproduct of that, when you combine companies, when you combine teams, you also combine systems and processes. Some of these could become redundant, some of them are just a duplication. So the idea of composability already help us with either swapping these components into and introducing that into a new purpose, right? And that's similar to recycling, right? I don't have to just take that system that seems to be redundant and just throw it away. I can repurpose it to fit another kind of a process or a system that I can use. And in terms of sustainability, this means I can not only recycle, but I can save on introducing something new, and I can save on disposing and decommissioning some of these systems. Another thing is longevity and maintainability. Same concept. These systems, these standalone systems, as we continuously monitor and track, we can identify which of them over time needs to be upgraded, right? Many of our ecosystems are already shaped with legacy. So no matter what, like going throughout that, there's always going to be some legacy parts of your system, especially if you are a brand or a business that has been in the market for so long. This gives you the benefit of putting this like legacy in a box. You can isolate these pieces, you can continuously enhance and upgrade, right? And the more you continue with this process, it means on the long run, you are creating a system that can last for long. And lasting for long, it means you have more optimized system. It means less resources are consumed, less waste is produced, and all of that just go hand in hand with the sustainability goals. All right, so where's my keyboard? What are some of the strategic implementation that comes to mind when we talk about that? First thing, we started with those green by design, right? So as you're building your products or your website or even going through an upgrade or through a refinement or I don't know, a facelift for your website, you integrate that as every part of your life cycle. As I'm doing my design, as I'm doing my content strategy, as I'm building my website, as I'm deploying, as I'm choosing the vendor that goes with prioritizing energy efficient and low impact components. We can start look into those vendors out there that can help us host and provide green solution that can help us with the overall consideration for sustainability. Same thing with monitoring tools. The nice thing about that is if you consider these tools from the beginning, you can always spot these parts, these components of your ecosystem that's degrading over time, and you can help, rectify as soon as. So you don't have to wait until, someone comes and say like our site performance is very bad and we do diagnostics and we found out that this component, this section of the site is the cause of that. Just thinking about these things from the beginning, putting these criteria and metrics can help us with our implementation. All right, so we've talked about composability, like in the diagram, about each one of these systems or components individually, how we can think about it from a sustainable perspective. How about our middle layer? So one of the main goals of going composable is we get away from monolith implementation, right? So get over tightly coupled implementation into more of a loose coupled implementation, things where I can plug in and plug out on demand or whenever is needed. And one of the main considerations that we need to also keep in mind is that our middle layer doesn't end up being a monolith by itself. Because one of the main usage of this layer is to combine, aggregate, and get all of these information from all these different systems and vendors and present it to your website. And we tend to customize, right? Because customization always comes as an option, as something that it's, how about doing it this way or that way, right? So one of the main things to think about is not only think about your individual components in a composable infrastructure or architecture, also think about your middle layer, not to lose it in the process. Now, this is from an architecture perspective. There's a lot to can be talking about that, but I just wanted to bring the concept of composability because it's something on the mind of everyone. And as we move more and more towards like Sitecore SaaS and all of these products, just think about sustainability, how it's easily can be coined in with that. And you can actually label your architecture implementation green or friendly. The other one is data and content, and it comes under a concept that I get to know, and I think everyone knows, it's managing data waste. And data waste means that all of these items in your Sitecore tree that is no longer needed, that becomes obsolete over time, that has no further engagement. Maybe it's on sitting in the Sitecore tree since 2005. I don't know. I've seen clients with the news archive since the early 2000s, and they are not served even anymore. But they sit and the Sitecore tree. And as we all know, that doesn't only come, it's not just because it's in the Sitecore tree, it's archived or somewhere else, it's not consuming. Part of the activities that we regularly do is doing backups, is storage. All of that comes with the price tag. So the more I have unused, obsolete, redundant data sitting in my tree, it means more storage it takes in my database or my file system. It means more computation when I do a backup, more computation when I do migration, more computation when I do upgrades, all of that. So simply they call it data waste, and managing data waste is one of the core responsibility for any content author or content editor, right? So these practices are something we regularly do. Nothing new in here, but this is the nice thing about this is if we take a step back and look into how we do things within Sitecore, within our practices, it can easily fit and be in compliance already with sustainability practices and goals. Regular content audits. One of the main things that we always talk about is how to have a proper content tree that is easily to maintain and regularly being checked. One thing you don't like is to have a stale content out there that has no engagement, that drives no traffic to your website, but it's out there transferred back and forth, consuming resources that are not needed. That also comes into how we can strategically create content that is necessary and avoid just sending or doing things just because, right? We have all the analytics data. We have all of the tools that can be needed to even measure every pixel in our website. How does it perform, right? So it's focusing more on how we can deliver and optimize the messages that we are doing. So when we say like use more content, it means when I have a section of my site, I'm displaying an image and I have to display more because my content is not good enough, that's not good. If I have to do that because I have a product that needs more images to display how my instrument works, then I need to provide and support optimized media. And the benefits of that, everyone knows, is like improved your website performance, cost efficiency, and brand reputation. So it's already on brand with all of your business goals. It's just adding that label to it. And finally, we have tools and metrics. There is plenty of tools out there that does this. And I can just show one quickly. This one. Okay. So I just measured the BBC for the sake of it. It shows you like as a grading system where you are at. It gives you how many CO2 is emitted every time someone is visiting your page, and then gives you a whole lot of information about the impact on the environment and all of that. The nice thing with tools like this is as you work towards creating more environment friendly implementation, you can continuously measure and have that kind of an idea, am I in the right way or not? Yeah, and that's it, I think. What I wanted to say in a nutshell, although the concept of sustainability is not new, it becomes increasingly a hot topic. If we have been following the trends about making sure our websites are usable, they're accessible, all of that is eventually going to lead for a sustainable implementation. Landing on a page where the video play the moment you do that is not only an inconvenience, right? It's not an accessible practice, but at the same time, it does a huge data transfer. It consumes resources for something that should not be intended there, right? And I've just added UX out there because again, these like the UX, the customer experience and technical implementation have a huge impact on how we do that. But basically the message is how we can provide better conversion with less. And that's how sustainability can be tied easily with our implementations.
All right,
And that's it.
awesome. We're going to quickly go to Vaishali. Thank you, Ishraq. We're going to quickly go to
Thank you.
Vaishali for time.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I'm going to share my
Very
screen.
detailed.
One second. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today. And Ishraq, that was absolutely amazing. I personally loved it and I couldn't agree anymore. I think the best thing is that right after your topic, the topic that I'm going to talk about, you made my life easy. So I really appreciate it. So what we're going to dive right into today is designing customer experience and modular components, creating flexibility and adaptability along with consistency. So we'll kickstart by who I am and why I'm here, CX and modular content, walk through experiential content, some of the strategies for designing components, and then a quick round of Q&A if there is anything. So who am I? I am new in the world of CX compared to and new in the world of Sitecore compared to everybody else. I've been here for almost 3 to 4 years now, and I'm a young, independent, driven girl in my 20s, living in Dubai, figuring life out and adulting, which is hard. Recognized as a Sitecore strategy MVP and top 10 CX stars. I really believe in advocating how strategy and Sitecore in the world of technology kind of build together and work together to design better human experiences. Why am I here? I'm here to just bridge that gap between how we can conducting over 500 interviews. I really believe that there is a gap between listening to everything that Sitecore offers. Strategy is fluffed or is called fluffy, unfortunately, for many parts of the world. And so I'm here to kind of make sure that it is real, it exists, and it really works. Um, so customer experience and modular content, we already have heard of this, we know what customer experience is, and it's important in today's day and age. So beautifully, Ishraq already mentioned what modular design, modular components are. We've heard all of that today, but what I'm interested to dive in today is how do both of those work together and help us create adaptability and flexibility, the two extremely strong pillars of customer experience and modular design. The reason why it's so important, just like Ishraq mentioned, whether it's about sustainability, efficiency, it boils down to what does the customer want and how can, as content editors, we make their life easier, but how can we make our lives easier through adaptability and flexibility in this ever evolving space of digital media and digital strategy. So Imagine you guys are on a holiday in Eastern Europe. It's great summer afternoon, and you know how we all do our little homework and research about, hey, I know I need to go to this place to eat. I need to try this local delicacy. I'm very interested that there's a very famous burger joint, and it's been on your list to go visit that place, right? And where you can build your perfect. You've heard about how you can build your perfect burger from a variety of different ingredients. You can actually pick and choose what kind of meat, bun, or anything else that you would like. You know, what kind of like, do you want sesame bun or do you want multigrain bun or do you want patty, etc., etc. And each of this ingredient is carefully prepared and blended for you because you are interested to have a certain taste and a certain experience. And then you say this to this guy, you know, I need my burger, I need no tomatoes, but I need like extra pickle, or I need no lettuce and I need extra tomatoes, or make it cheesy and add a double meat, or toast the bun and all of that. But what do you get at the end? And each time you create something, oopsie, oh, what happened? Oh, my slide's missing. Oh, sorry. Uh, that is strange. Sorry, there's a slide missing for some reason. Give me a second. Oh, my burger is not showing. That's so weird. Okay, that was a very nice, delicious burger here, I promise. And it looked really good, and it had a variety of burgers, which you could just see how your end product came together. And so adapting to your taste, and that was my burger, but it's not here. But it's okay, never mind. Let's move next. Oh, there you go. It's back. Okay, cool. So that's the burger, and that's the variety you can create based on your taste. But how does this kind of fit into what we're talking about? And why are we talking about the ingredients of a burger? So, in the same way, you can customize your burger. Businesses can use modular components in Sitecore to kind of create that tailored experiences for each of their customers in this ever evolving change. You can kind of choose what kind of components you want, kind of button you want, what kind of, FAQ component you want, or featureless card you want. All of that can be designed for the end user. Whether a customer visits a site on an app or engages with your brand on social media, the core components or the ingredients of the digital world can remain consistent while the experience is customized to build based on that specific mobile or tablet or desktop. It can all come together. So just as your burger, when you are creating this, each ingredient is high quality and works very well with another, similar to what components would do, is you find that perfect Lego brand, Lego and fix them together. Psycho ensures that each modular component, whether it's a product display or a CTA, seamlessly functions across all different channels. And I think that is so important in today's day and age where you don't have to wait to be on a computer to check a site. Every time we hear about something, we are just like using our phones to figure things out. So this approach actually allows businesses to deliver a more consistent and flexible customer experience. No matter how much you like your burger and want it a certain way, you can do the same thing based on the phone or the tablet that you're using. You can actually design it for the user based on that. So here are some popular modular components that we all have heard of, whether it's reusability, design, component, customization, personalization, type of content, seamless integration, digital ecosystem. We all have heard of these, but why I want to emphasize on this a bit more today is because you need to understand that when we talk about modular components, obviously we have all these benefits that we just spoke about a couple of minutes ago. But more than anything else, it has a bigger picture to things. There's pieces of strategy that fit in. You think about things, you think about variations, you think about what kind of content you want to show. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into, we obviously have spoken about how these modules of components can become content, and customer experience, component, and content, all these three C's are the most important C's, I think, and are extremely important in our world of modular design, because today we have that flexible with Sitecore to kind of pick and choose and say, you know what, I want to offer my customers the best experience. I want to make sure that we have enough components in place to meet all kinds of requirements. And guess what? We actually have enough content that is more reusable, efficient, and is relevant to the customer. And we can show them in the way we all want them to show based on whichever container or component we want them to kind of visualize and see it. So all of them are interlinked. But I'm just going to take a pause or a second here to focus on one very important thing. When we talk about content, we talk about all these important things that content should be relevant, content should be this, content should have a certain tone of voice. It's important for the customer to understand what that purpose is, all of these things. And there are there are these many different types of content that are the buzzwords of today. But I'm very interested to walk you guys or introduce you. Some of you might have already heard of it, some of you have not. It's experimental content. Now, what is this exactly? It's a combination of experience that you're creating through content. So I'll give you a minute for you guys to read this definition of content. And focus on these key takeaways for you guys today. It is about designing your audience on taking your audience on a journey. It's making them feel immersed. So you're talking about emotions here, you're talking about feelings here, and you're actually telling them a story. What is the flow of a page? End of the day, right? If you are not able to take your customer through that start of the page till the end of the page, you have lost your audience. You've lost the reader. There is not going to be a conversion. There can definitely be a visitor or increase in visit, but there's no conversion because you've already lost your customer. Either it's the component or the content or the experience that you've designed for them that based on that they've lost. So when we think of users, there are three important things: what they're looking for, where they're looking for, and when they're looking for that specific content. And if, as content editors or content creators, we can hit that nail over there, we've done a good job. So, here are key strategies I think I would like to share that have worked very well for us. Having worked for over 10 different industries from manufacturing, non for profit, education, banking, fintech, and a few others. Here are my certain experiences and learnings on being in the CX world for really long and how we design those components and experiences for customers. First, and from a strategic perspective, I think first and foremost is requirements gathering. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is and how directly linked it is from requirements gathering to identifying the components and bridging that gap. Because most of the clients say, most of the times clients say that they want a certain thing, but then as you see what their design is and how it's coming into reality when you're designing it on Figma or anything, you're like, that's not what you really want or spoke about. So having the right requirements and doing that gathering exercise is extremely crucial. Take down notes. Make sure that if they say a carousel is supposed to work a certain way, ask them why do they want it to work a certain way? What kind of experience have they seen on other sites? What other inspirational sites would they share with us that we can look at to understand where they come from? That is extremely important. The second one is content reusability. Think about how you're going to be reusing that same information time and time again. It could be one paragraph, but then on a specific page, but then on the next page, you actually want to break them down into three different pieces. And then maybe you can use the feature list card over there. But if you were to break them down into 6 different points, then you could define and decide on how you want to display that, whether it's a hero banner carousel, whether it is any kind of different component. You can pick and choose what you want the user to see. But I would re-emphasize again is that, you can, as strategic Sitecore MVP, we can help and guide users on how to do that, kind of navigate clients to what's the best practices in the industry, because we are the forefront of what's happening around over here and how we can design those experiences better. Next point is simplifying naming convention. I can't emphasize enough that, how much we think when we design components and everything for clients, they will understand. Unfortunately, no matter how many guides and training materials you give them, it is a struggle to help them understand what works and what doesn't work and which is which component. So have a simple namifying convention. So if they're building a page and they're putting up templates together, they know exactly when you say a hero banner where it would fall. Or if you say have some kind of naming convention, whether it is, a template name, a numeric or alphanumeric coding system that you can have in place. So they can remember that, oh, A1K is something else, or but AY2K is, or is another coding number, and have series of A to B to C or to D. Or C can be for all the possible carousels, V can be for videos, I can be for images. You can pick and choose how you want them to help. Or you can have split text components with S, but start having a more simplified way of designing those components. And I'm going to re-emphasize why this is important is because then they will know what works for them, and they are not asking you to build something that they're like, oh, we don't have it and we don't know it exists, or this particular functionality exists but the other one doesn't. So it will help the client also have better longevity and maintain and use those components that you're creating for them more longer. Very quickly, design variation matrix. When you think of designing components, think about what kind of variations you want. Say if you're designing a mega menu, you want two links with three images, or versus if we don't do three images, we do two images, we'll have up to four links. If we don't have images, we can have up to six links, many column links. So it's important that you identify and think about all those different variations, even not only across a mega menu, but across different components, from like a hero banner or a content banner with call to action, or how many call to actions do you want to have over there? Why do you want to have so many call to actions? Think about those, because that will help even developers make their life easy when you're writing user stories and acceptance criteria for them when they're building components for Sitecore. Last piece is see, yeah. Last one is asset reusability. Second last is asset reusability, and asset reusability is extremely important because you want users to know where an image would come, or where a video would come, or how can they reuse that kind of content over and over again. So allowing them to know certain dimensions or certain aspect ratios when you're designing those components. Say if it's a 9:16, then keep that consistent, but if it's a 16:9, kind of keep that consistent so they can even use that asset again and again, and they don't have to keep creating it. And then the last piece is parameterization. When building components, this is extremely important because you want to allow and give that content editor and content author that kind of flexibility. Okay, you know what? You can choose the background color, you can choose the text alignment, the indent, the image display on the right or the left. You can embed YouTube video or Vimo video. You can kind of pick and choose. So allowing users those basic flexibility really helps them to say, I feel in control. And that's the feeling we want to give users. And I think that is extremely important and can be managed, through the parameters of Sitecore Experience Editor. Lastly, very quickly, we want to get our basics right. No matter how many components we create, we need to always have data in place, whether it's having a goal targeting, goal tagging, which will help us track and tag those goals in place, having profile cards, taxonomy tagging, as well as seamlessly integrated with the analytics tool and everything else. It needs to be more integrated, because whenever you're creating a component, make sure you have those kind of data structure and fields in place. So when required, you can create those data reports and you can use that data for a better behavior and say, we think users would click over here, but actually we see that they're not clicking over here. Or heat maps, eye tracking, all of those kind of aspects of analytics are extremely important when you're designing, because they will help keep that piece of creating components, but also keeping them maintained and ongoing really important. You know your customer more than the customer themselves. And the beauty of designing customer experience allows you to identify and understand what the customers want. So you can build all these different components and beautifully put them together, and actually track them based on users' preference and understanding. But the choice is really yours. design better modular and reusable components for better customer experience, and you will see that conversion in business. Next slide is particularly my favorite. And I love this one because it's like a great meme. And I think this is how it should be. All buttons should be consistent. There should be flexibility to change colors, to do everything else, to change alignment. But you want to build that standardization along with adaptability. And that right balance is what will lead to a happy, mindful designing. So thank you so much for, having me here today. And I'm really, really grateful to be on SMAC here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Vaishali. All right. And last up, but certainly not least, is we have Gaurav.
Yeah. Okay. I'll share my screen and let's get started.
Awesome.
Okay. Let me know once you see my screen.
We can see it. It's not in
Okay,
slideshow
cool.
mode, though.
Yeah. Now we
There
should
you
have
go.
it. Okay, so hi everyone. Excited to be here. My name is Gaurav Upreti. Something about me, so I'll be taking care of the overall work that we may have done in the content migration space. So in the world of digital experience platforms, there have been a lot of migration being done. There have been a lot of new beginnings for organizations where they are trying to revamp their old or legacy systems into new migrating and new systems which are more beneficial in terms of managing a lot of content or managing a lot of data. And in that space, I'm looking forward to enhance your visibility on what are the pitfalls that we might face in that content migration space, and what are the lessons that we have learned so far that can be beneficial. And something about me, I'm working as a product manager with Icreon, a total of 12 years, more than 12 years of experience. I have been associated for more than 7 years with Icreon now, and like more than 6 years of experience working on the Sitecore ecosystem, and somewhat around 12 plus Sitecore projects. I hold certifications like XM Cloud, CDP, and Burstlize, and been working on these different data pointers. And then I'm currently based out of New York, and you can reach me out on my email and LinkedIn if needs be any association on any of the topics or discussion. So let's get started with the overall process that we are going to talk about today. So the agenda would be, we will be understanding what is the process of content migration, some of the common pitfalls that we can avoid to have or to have a smoother transition of content from one system to another, and avoiding any of the bottlenecks that we can, right? And then we'll be talking about some case studies that we have identified out of the overall experience, some lessons learned, and then we conclude about it, right? So let's start with the content migration process overall. So this process that we are talking about today is just about the content of a website, which may be one legacy system where they have their content associated on more than one systems as well in some of the instances. And then we are moving it to a new revamped system where we are migrating the overall content from the old system to the new system. And that may be any digital experience or any other platform where they have stacked all the content and moving it to a digital experience platform, which is more revamped and more modular in terms of kind of Sitecore, XM Cloud, and so on and so forth. Right. So this process talks about the overall what content migration in this particular scenario is. Then what strategy we involved in terms of content migration and what are the steps involved. So I'll briefly talk about these steps. So in these steps, what we do is we first of all identify what all sources of content are there. It may be one, it may be multiple. And then based on the sources that we have identified, we look at what is the volume and what is the type of content that we are dealing with. The volume may be large, it may be small, there may be different data types, different things involved, different assets, and altogether a lot of data variations that we may see. Then we also look at the content quality, which is again an important aspect. The old system may have content quality compromised, or maybe it's outdated. So we need to make sure that the quality is maintained when we are trying to move content from one system to another. And also involve some content mapping where we make sure that all the content in the legacy system versus the new system, those connections are established before we actually move into the part where we migrate the data or move the data. Then we will also look into the transformation of content wherever we feel the content may need transformation, like there are HTML values, tags and all those which may not be needed in the new system, as we are dealing with a new system, a new component which we have already pre-created with those values. So we can transform that kind of content. And then at the end, we choose what migration strategy to use. Is it a manual migration, some manual plus automation migration, any content scraping that we can do? And then is it a big bang model? Is it a phase migration, depending on what the need is and what the timelines are? And at the end, throughout this process, we ensure that there is a continuous review and testing at each step, because every step is crucial when we are dealing with a lot of content. Anything that we miss out, or anything that may not be accounted for, may lead to issues at a later time. So continuous review and testing is equally important and should be given the due diligence and due importance in terms of content migration. So that concludes the overall like process wise, what we do as part of content migration and how we do the strategy around it. Next, moving into the overall content migration pitfalls that may be something you can avoid, and those pitfalls are common pitfalls that we face during any content migration project. So some of the common pitfalls are, one of them is underestimating the scope. So let's suppose you are working on a migration project, and the overall success depends on how you move the content from one system to another. But every time we are dealing with a lot more content and there is a lot of things involved, there is a due diligence that needs to happen, and we need to understand what all work items are available as part of the old system that we need to migrate, what all elements are there, how many different types of elements are there. Based on that, we can determine, okay, element one may take X amount of time, amount of effort, and X amount of resources to work on that. And based on that, the same strategy, we can define the different aspects in content. And even there can be different content templates, and each of them have a different kind of data structure in the old system, which we need to migrate. So all those things need to be ensured. And this pitfall, in order to avoid this pitfall, we need to understand what are the essential elements that we need to migrate, and we need to make sure that we understand the overall scope in terms of complexity, in terms of type, in terms of the volume of data, in terms of the resources needed to work on that, and so on and so forth. So this is one of the pitfalls. Next is not planning the migration efficiently. So eventually we put a lot of focus on development and other elements, component creation, designing, but there is a due importance that also needs to be put into the planning of migration of content. Because when we are planning for migration, we can we can maybe avoid some of the this pitfall by utilizing more planning into the picture, where we identify, okay, there are 10 different milestones, 10 different goals out of the overall project, and achieving these goals would take this amount of elements, or these amount of data pointers that we need to identify and plan before we actually perform the migration. Sometimes we just take a migration project or a content migration project, just moving content from one place to another, but we forget that there may be transition or transformation involved, and overall other processes like moving their URLs, redirects, links, all those. So need a proper planning for migration. That is one of the pitfall which we can ensure by doing proper planning. So not planning is again one of the things we need to avoid. Then moving on to another pitfall, that is poor communication with the stakeholders. So eventually what happens is, when you are doing any content migration project, there needs to be a proper channel with the communication perspective with the stakeholders. There can be one single stakeholder, multiple stakeholders, depending on if you're talking to the management, if you're talking to the business users, or are you talking to the end users. Usually what happens is, we have a slight, a simple or single channel where we are talking to the main stakeholders who are providing us details, but they may be end users who know the exacts. So it is important and very important to have a proper communication channel with all the stakeholders at the starting of the project itself, in order to understand what are their goals, their objectives, and trying to understand what are the things we need to consider when migrating. And the end users, who are the usually the content editors, they will give us a better picture of where their content lies, what are the complexities that they feel are there, and those complexities are something which will help us in transitioning content from one place to another. Then moving on, the next pitfall that we have is gap in content mapping and structuring. So eventually in any system, you have a content, there is a separate structure or a particular structure that they follow, and those structure aligns with the new system or not. If not, then that is again a pitfall if you're not doing a proper mapping or proper structuring of the content. So in one system, you have a title field. You cannot just make it like rich text field. Something has to be aligned, and you need to understand what is the crux behind using a specific data type or data structure in terms of the old system, and like referring to the new system and doing the mapping accordingly, how it would be used moving forward. So whenever there is a content gap in mapping and structuring, you need to avoid it by correctly mapping all the data pointers. It may be one, it may be multiple, from component to component perspective or from page to page perspective, whatever may be the course of action, but it needs to be going as something as a solution to avoid this pitfall. Then moving ahead, we have another step like not performing testing at each step of migration. So again, we take migration as the end result and we try to do all the review at the end when the migration is done. But it is equally important to review and understand all overall work and test overall work that we are doing at each step. It may be identifying the system. Are we identifying all the system? Is something missing? Is the quality correct? Is the quality ensured? Everything on that sense from the starting till the end. It's not a one single process to do at the end. It's like throughout the cycle, you need to perform that. Then again, one of the pitfalls that we have is considering quality over quantity over quality. So eventually, a lot of projects have a lot of quantifiable data, or volume of data is large and content is large. So usually there the focus is more around getting all the content from one system to another migrated smoothly. But at that moment, we also need to ensure that if quality is not given precedence over quantity, then obviously it may lead to a failure of the migration project, or there may be data anomalies or data issues at the end of the day when we do the migration as the project completes. So eventually, the overall emphasis should be understanding that quality is very important. And if it needs to have an MVP kind of structure where we only do certain amount of data which is going as part of the MVP with the quality, that will be more apt than doing the whole content and later on fixing it from a quality standpoint. So that is again a pitfall, and this is how you can avoid it. Then the next is not prioritizing the SEO elements such as metadata and redax. So as the content that you're migrating, it is very important to migrate the content in the right amount, right way. But also on the sidelines, there are some elements such as SEO elements like metadata, title of the page, meta title, meta descriptions, and then there are certain redirects that we have in place. Those are equally important the content migration process is. And whenever we are not prioritizing these elements as the top, and we are just thinking of content migration in terms of data from one page to another, from a UI standpoint or a front end standpoint, then we need to also consider these elements, because these are directly tied with the ranking of the page in a SEO perspective, or they may be tied to the traffic of the overall page, and it may lead to loss of traffic. It may lead to loss of engagement when there is any page that doesn't have metadata, or any of the page that is not redirected properly, where you start seeing 404. That will end at the end of the day, it will lose engagement of the user, as well as the user experience is lost over there. So to avoid this pitfall, always emphasize on whatever elements are part of the page backend structure, the SEO structure, as well as any redirects that may be working in the backend, or any changes that may need to be done to those redirects need to be accounted for. So that is again another pitfall. Then the last pitfall that we have is ignoring the post migration audits and issue fixes. So eventually, as other projects, we think about once the overall work is done, we just give it a high level review. But also important, as we do on other projects where we are doing development, it is equally important to also do the same process of monitoring after go live. that all the content that we have migrated, if there is any anomaly, any issues that found later on, we need to plan to fix them as part of the overall work that we have achieved. And post migration, it is essential to review all the things are working perfectly or not. If there is any issue found, we need to get that also aligned with the overall plan of doing the other work, post migration work, and then we need to align that in a sprint or in our agenda and the board to work on with. So these are some of the pitfalls that we can avoid to have a smoother content migration transition. Now moving on, some of the case studies that I'll quickly go through. One of the case study is the unaccounted redirect. So this was one of the migration project that we worked for, where all the redirects were intact, and we moved all those redirects from one system to the another system. But in the interim timeline, someone from the content team, while the migration was happening, they thought of updating some of the page URLs because they wanted to group them under a separate folder structure, but unaware or unrealizing of the fact that this may break the URLs because some of the old pages were already having a new IA or information architecture, and those URLs were ended up going to 404 because of the fact that there was an interim change. So the pitfall here was redirects were not set up properly and were missed because of the fact there was change in the interim timeline. And then the impact was the SEO was impacted, the user experience was impacted, and there were some 404s that were coming up. And how we resolved this particular pitfall or the issue that we recognized during our process of review, that we did a due diligence of the overall site, found out all the 404s, went to our mapping sheet that we had created for the old URL versus new URL. The mapping sheet gave us the hint that, okay, the URL was supposed to be X, but it is now updated to Y, and we knew the reason why it is happening. And then we through with the client or the customer to either get it updated back to what it was originally, or if the use case was to get it updated to the new URL, we got the redirects updated accordingly. And the key takeaway from this particular thing was that it is utmost important to have a URL mapping sheet between the old system and the new system so that we know where we are doing the migrations, what are the new URLs or old URLs, what is the mapping between them. And if any of the old URL needs to point to a single source of truth, then the redirects are in place for that. Then the next case study, I'll quickly talk about this as well. There was some data loss incident that happened. This was again a large content migration where a lot of things were available. There were a lot of templates, and all these templates, we accounted for all the data that were available within the template. But some of the pages, like out of 100%, 20% of the pages had additional content available within them, which was not part of the actual template, but it was just part of the page. And that was something not highlighted. And eventually it led to data loss for unaccounted data elements. The impact was, again, we had some data entities not available, and we found out during our audit that the new page versus the old page, the data doesn't match when we did one-to-one mapping. And then the resolution for this was, when we identified this issue, we identified, okay, there are additional components needed. So we added additional components to those respective pages via script using the shell script of Sitecore. And then we also migrated the content on those specific components rather than doing the whole migration again. So it was just one-to-one mapping. And the key takeaway from this was, it is daily basis to be aware that any change that is happening when the migration is in effect needs to be like notified, and we need to be in proper communication with them to avoid any unnecessary issues later on. So yeah, these were the case studies, and quickly moving to the lessons learned. So some of the lessons learned and planning and preparation, where it is very essential to have a planning and preparation for content management, which is a crucial in the overall success. So better plan, better preparation leads to a better content migration overall. Then as we spoke about stakeholder involvement, it is very important from starting. All the stakeholders, and it is eventually the content editors included, are part of the overall strategy, and they are aware of all the work we are doing, and they should make us aware of any things that change during the process or after the process of data migration and the content migration overall. Then identify any identify the content in scope. So eventually, again, this is very important to have a crucial like element, which is identifying the content in scope. There may be 10 different pages, 20 different articles, but we need to analyze, okay, out of those 10, which ones are the ones which are readily available for the new site, something which is outdated or something which is not needed, invalid, or test data. Those are can be like avoided from the migration step, which will reduce the timeline as well as which will reduce the impact on overall review and other processes that we are doing as part of data migration. Then quickly moving to data backup process. Again, data backup is another thing which is very crucial, because when you have a proper backup available, if there is anything that goes wrong during any of the processes, or at the end you have any data loss or data anomalies, the backup will be very handy in terms of getting the data migrated, as we had in the case study 2, where there were some data anomalies and we had the backup, so we were able to trace it out and we were able to get it like verified and reviewed, and then we were able to change it. Then testing is the key. So testing as much as possible needs to be done. As much review needs to be done on all the content, from the content audit standpoint to the end result of content migration. Everything needs to be tested and reviewed at regular intervals to avoid any issues that may arise later on if you don't have a proper testing plan in place. Then also the last thing that we have in the lesson learned is the prioritizing SEO and UX. As I mentioned, SEO is equally important to the page data, and it marks to all the metadata that is needed for the page. And if any of them misses, we will have anomalies in the rankings, as well as it will reduce the engagement. So we need to consider that the SEO is there, and the redirects and all those things account for 404, which may reduce the user engagement from a user's experience standpoint or usability standpoint. So we need to avoid any of these. So this is one of the lessons learned as well. Now, the last but not the least, the conclusion. So as a conclusion end statement, I would say content migration specifically, is not as easy as it may seem, because usually we feel that content migration is okay, just moving data from one system to another, but there are a lot of complexity involved, a lot of data entities involved. So we need to make sure that we understand all the deliverables, account for all the deliverables, have proper checks are something which has to be readily done at every space or every step of the content migration to make it a successful migration project. And all these pitfalls that we talk about, those pitfalls need to be the checklist item that we can have handy whenever we are doing the migration process, and we avoid any unnecessary issues or delays down the line in the project. So this concludes the overall thing that I wanted to present from the data migration perspective and content migration pitfalls. So yeah, thank you. If any questions, then let me know, or if not, then also you can reach out to me later on gaurav.upreti@icreon.com or via LinkedIn using this URL. Yeah, so that's all from my side as well. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you to all three of our speakers. Thank you. I know we went a little bit over time, but it was all really great content. You guys put a lot of effort into it. Definitely, if you guys have questions, please reach out to Tomas or myself, and we'll get you in touch with the speakers, or feel free to reach out to the speakers directly if you're able to find them on LinkedIn. Thanks again, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day.